Now I'm unmuted.
Yeah. Okay, we're ready to go. I'll tell you in 20 minutes, right? So our final contributor talk is by Stephen Gunawardana. Okay, he's going to tell us about topically localized single band binary functions for 2D characters.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk here today. Yeah, so I'll be presenting something, perhaps a bit different from the things you've seen so far, but it's based on this paper here, which was published quite recently. So yeah. Okay, so quick affirmation. I would like to thank Ari Turner, my main collaborator for this work, and Ryan Barnett, my supervisor. So, there we go. All right, so I'm going to assume that most of you here have seen one-year functions before to some degree, but a quick introduction. So one-year functions are just kind of an alternative basis of states. So you have some periodic Hamiltonian, you have a set of block states. You can do a unitary transformation on them of this form, and you can you end up with a set of localized states, states localized in real space, and these things are called one-year functions. As you can see, so you have some subset of bands that you take, and you apply the unitary to them, and then you get a set of one-year functions. You get a set of one-year functions for each band, one per unit cell. That's what the real space lattice vector denotes. And denotes a band. So this is the definition. And why do we care about these things? Because they have a lot of nice properties. They're orthonormal. They preserve the band projector from the set of bands you use to construct them. They preserve translation invariance in the sense that each of the one-year functions in each unit cell is just a translationally invariant, translated copy of the one-year functions in the other unit cells. So that's very nice. And so these things can be used for many different types of calculations to get various local properties, bonding, structural defects, polarization, quantum transport, also to construct tight binding Hamiltonians. So very useful things. So this is kind of, that's sort of definition. But with these things, there's kind of one major concern when you first look at the definition is you realize that these things depend on the sort of gauge you choose for the block state that you use to construct them. And that might be a problem. So what do we do about this gauge dependence? So the thing you do to deal with the fact that they depend on gauge is that so this is just saying that again. So gauge transformation is something of this form. For a single band or for a multi-band, you have some unitary rotation of the block states. And each of those, you do such a gauge transformation, you get an equally valid set of one-year functions. And so to deal with this issue of gauge dependence, what we usually do is we come up with some concrete way of fixing a gauge. And the kind of well-known and most accepted way of doing this is to minimize the total variance of your one-year functions, which makes sense because the whole point of having these is for them to be localized. And so the way you kind of make them as localized as possible is by saying, let's minimize the variance. That will fix your gauge, basically. That'll give you a specific set of one-year functions. So this is the usual idea. And looking at it a bit further, that variance that was written down before, which is the thing at the bottom, you can write it in K-space. You can write this variance in K-space, and it turns out that it basically looks like this. You have the Berry connection appearing here, and this is just for a single band. But basically, this is the part of the variance that's gauge dependent, and so this is the thing that one wishes to minimize in order to minimize the variance. And it turns out quite nicely that for sort of non-topological systems where everything is fixed, it turns out that if you minimize this variance over smooth gauges, the condition that you must satisfy is this. It's kind of a nice Coulomb gauge condition. So if this condition is satisfied, then you're in the gauge that minimizes the variance. That's one you want. So this is kind of the standard story. So before we kind of look at Chinese insulators or anything like that, a few brief remarks about what happens in sort of a 1D case where everything is very nice. So in 1D, basically it turns out that the states that minimize this variance correspond precisely to the eigenstates of the projected position operator. So projected onto the subspace of bands that you're considering. This is true for a single band, this is true for multi-band. So in 1D, that is kind of very nice thing. And it also turns out that this is also related to the eigenstates of the Wilson loop operator that appears here. So that's very nice. And it also turns out that these one-year functions, these maximally localized one-year functions, in 1D are always exponentially localized. So it's very nice. However, we are interested here in 2D systems, particularly topological ones, where things are not as nice. So what happens in 2D? Well, in 2D, it turns out that you can't generally, diagonalize the projected position operator simultaneously anymore. That's what we did in 1D. Can't do that anymore because they don't commute. Why do they not commute? Well, it turns out that the commutator is directly related to the Chern number. So, if you have something topological, these things don't commute. And it has been shown that such one-year functions, if you construct them in this way, they decay algebraically. That has been shown. But moreover, this algebraic decay is such that the variance of such one-year functions, if you naively attempt to compute it, is infinite because the decay is such that the variance blows up. Yeah. So these are the issues. So what do we do about this? Well, it turns out that we can still do something about this, and that's going to be the rest of this talk. How do we attempt to compute such optimal one-year functions in this setting? Well, there we go. So let's kind of focus on a single Chern insulating band from this point forward. So this work is about a single band. So a single isolated band, basically. You take such a band, and it turns out that the block states have vortices in the Brillouin, right? The sum number of points where you can't have a smooth gauge, basically. And so we know that we have this Berry curvature, which is defined to be the curl of the Berry connection. This is smooth, and this is true everywhere except at the vortices, right? So what you do, you kind of take different gauges in different regions of the Brillouin, and in each of those regions, you get that the curl of A is a Berry curvature, and it's smooth. However, if I now insist on having a single gauge to cover the entire Brillouin, so I'm not, I can't kind of hide the vortex by using different gauge patches. If I use a single gauge, well, it turns out that, well, let's suppose that I have Chern number 1, so I have one single point in the Brillouin zone on which my gauge cannot be smooth. Well, in that case, I can't kind of cover up the vortex anymore. So my curl of my Berry connection has to look like this. So you have the smooth gauge in Berry curvature, and then you have this term which represents the fact that I have a vortex. So this the P here is a Brillouin zone sum of periodic delta functions, has to be periodic. So this is what the curl of the Berry connection looks like now. In the case of a Chern insulator, in this case, let's say that Chern number is plus or minus 1, so there's only 1 point, but otherwise there'll be a sum of such delta functions. So this is the setting, and so KV here is the position of my vortex in this. So what happens now? So now let's kind of forget for a moment that the variance is infinite. We'll get back to that a bit later. But let's just take this F or F tilde, which was this gauge dependent part of the variance in momentum space that I displayed before, that dependent on the Berry connection. So let's kind of take that, and now essentially the problem is one of I need to minimize my F tilde over smooth gauge transformations as before, but now I also have this sort of extra degree of freedom, which is where do I put the vortex in the Brillouin zone, because where I put the vortex changes the gauge, changes the localization of the one-year function. Basically, this is the picture. So we can kind of write this down more formally. Essentially, we're saying that we want to find a gauge in which first and foremost that Coulomb gauge condition from before is true. That is what you get by sort of minimizing this thing over smooth gauges. But then you also have this additional equation, which is saying, well, I have to have a vortex somewhere, and KV presents this degree of freedom of where do I put this vortex. And essentially, some choice of KV should, in principle, give me the best localized Bonnier function. And the question is, how do I find where to put the vortex to give me kind of the best localization? That's the way of putting the question. And yeah, so we can kind of make a couple of remarks for these equations. So these equations in principle would tell us this this Berry connection up to a constant, and there is a way of fixing this constant as well, which is important because we know that if I fix the vortex position, the integral of the Berry connection is nothing but sort of the Bonnier center in the kind of usual setting, right? And this thing should be a gauge invariant quantity, and so as long as I fix the vortex position, this should be gauge invariant. So for each value kb, this should be constant, and that kind of should give me, in principle, a unique solution to these equations. And the idea is that if I can somehow solve these equations, then I can figure out which kb gives me kind of the minimum variance, right? So this is the situation, and the way we do this. So how do we attempt to solve these equations? The trick is to basically rotate your Berry connection. So you can introduce this new field E, which is suitably named, as you will see. So you basically rotate the Berry connection this way. So this picture here is what would look like if you had a Berry connection with a vortex. That was a picture on the previous slide. If you rotate the field 90 degrees, and it looks like this now. So this looks like the electric field of a point charge, right? And it turns out also that the equations for E, so the equations for A, if you recall, you have the Coulomb gauge condition, and then the curl of A equal something. But now if I rotate this field, I have these equations where the curl of E is now 0, and the divergence of E is something. And these are basically just the electrostatic equations, where rho is just the charge distribution, which just came from that Berry curvature and this set of vortices. But now it's just a smooth charge distribution with this periodic set of point charges. So essentially, the problem we had before is basically the same as this problem. So, and why does this work? Because this works precisely because it turns out that if you look at that variance that we're minimizing from before, and you write everything in terms of this new field E, it turns out that the variance is now nothing but this electrostatic energy in this sort of this dual picture. And yeah, so keep in mind that A here has nothing to do with an electromagnetic potential. This is just a Berry connection, but E, it's the electric field. It turns out that the problem is now essentially equivalent to minimizing this thing. And so this is good because we just have to minimize the electrostatic energy of a periodic array of point charges in a neutralizing background. In fact, that is important. That Berry curvature term essentially ensures that the unit cell is neutral, so that everything can be done. So you have a number of point charges now in each unit cell, which is equal to your Chern number. So Chern number is 1, you have 1, and so on. And you, so we have been considering Chern number plus or minus 1, but you can also, consider higher Chern numbers if you wish to. So this is a sort of, so this is this electrostatic picture in which everything is very nice. And the way now we can kind of think about how you minimize the electrostatic energy. So this goes down to kind of some standard stuff now. Basically, you can break down your charge distribution into two parts. You have a smooth part, which is that smooth background, which is connected to the Berry curvature term. And then you have a kind of a point charge part, which is this periodic array of point charges. You can kind of split it up like this, where you add and subtract this constant rho naught, which again makes sure that each individual part of this charge distribution is neutral. And basically you can, so that's just rho naught. And you can just solve for the potentials, right, of each of these charge distributions independently. You can put them together. So this is the idea. And this we know kind of how to do, except the only trick is that this is periodic. So, okay, we have to solve for a periodic array of point charges, but this can be done. And once you do it, you find that your variance, which is the electrostatic energy in this picture, can just be written in this way. And once you write it in this way, because you have this two separate charge distributions for the smooth one and the one that corresponds to point charges. We can do kind of the standard thing where we expand this thing out, and we can use integration by parts. Yeah, because we know that that bit in the middle, the divergence of the electric field there that's the electric field that corresponds to the point charges. So we will get that bit there, and we will just end up with this particular expression. So a few comments here. So this constant basically has absorbed that first term here, the third term here. So what does that mean? The first term, well, that corresponds to essentially that contains the square of the electric field corresponding to the point charges, right? So that contains the self-energy bit of the point charges, and it also contains this interaction energy between the point charges, because you have a periodic array of them, they all interact with each other. So in the case of like the Chern number one, where we have just one per unit cell, we can see where the sort of infinity in this thing disappeared. The infinity went into that constant term because the infinity is basically in the self-energy of the point charges, right? And also this interaction energy between the point charges can also be absorbed in there because it doesn't depend on where you put the vortex in the unit cell. The only thing that really depends on where you put the vortex is this other term here, which is which itself depends on this potential phi s, which depends on the Berry curvature, because that potential came from a charge distribution related to the Berry curvature. So we have this, and so essentially what we can conclude from this is that the optimal vortex position, which minimizes f in some sense, basically goes at either the maximum or the minimum of this smooth potential, depending on what your Chern number is, whether it's plus or minus 1. And so this is again assuming that the Chern number is plus or minus 1 for now. We find basically that you just have to put the vortex at the maximum or minimum of the potential corresponding to the Berry curve. That's basically what it comes down to. And the infinity is all in the self-energy bit, which we can throw away because again, the constant term that is independent of the vortex position, doesn't matter when you put it. So this is what I just said. And in sort of, and you might ask, well, what does this self-energy correspond to in the real space picture? Because this is in terms of this electrostatic picture, but in our variance picture itself, this is just means we just put a long distance cutoff in the variance. So the self-energy is just that long distance, logarithmic divergence in the thing. We can kind of cut it off in some way, and then we end up with something sensible and something that can actually be minimized, right? And higher Chern numbers, if you wonder what happens, well, you have now multiple point charges, so it's a matter of how do I arrange these point charges, this lattice of point charges, such that the energy is minimized. But now you have to consider like the interactions between the different point charges in my unit cell, and it's a bit more complicated, but it's still the same sort of argument. It can still be done in the same way. You just have to in this kind of thing in the previous slide, you will just have like terms that involve the vortex potential or the point charge potential coming into play here as well, if you have a higher Chern number. That's basically okay. So let me, I guess, very quickly point out a couple of numerics, I suppose. So here's like a very particularly simple model on which we kind of test this, and we can see that so this is kind of just a simple Chern insulating model. Here we have chosen a position operator that knows about the different positions of the orbitals in it itself. So because of that, that's why you have this kx over 2 kind of stuff appearing here. But that's fine. And if you do this for such a thing, you can find this Chern number 1 in this particular region. We can compute these linear functions by looking at putting the vortex in this optimal position as predicted by this minimizing of this electrostatic energy. You find the optimal one on the left there, and on the right is kind of a suboptimal one. You put the vortex in some other place, and you can kind of see a clear difference between these things. And that's what I kind of wanted to show you there. And also here is kind of another validation of the theory, I suppose. So you have on one side this theoretical prediction of what the kind of how the variance behaves depending on where you shoot the vortex. And on the right hand side is kind of numerically putting the vortex at various points in the Brillouin zone and then minimizing the thing. And we can see that these two things agree. Of course, there's kind of a shift between them because the IEC in the variance is constant term, which contains all of these stuff energies and so on. But otherwise, everything agrees. Yeah, so I suppose I'm more or less out of time, right? I have one last section here, which I might not have time to go deeply into, but
Probably not.
yes,
A few minutes.
yes, let's do that.
Okay. So, any questions?
Yes, one of the basic factors of Monday functions and trend that they cannot be exponentially localized.
Yes, this is true.
What happens to the tails? Are they use the prefactor of the tails affected by different optimizations, or is the prefactor universal independent of process to make? I mean, in other words, does optimization just shape the Monday function on short distances, or does it also affect short distances?
I think it mostly affects the short distances. I mean, long distances, I haven't really looked at the prefactors very carefully, but in a sense, they should always still decay. I mean, they decay. This indicates 1/r squared long distances. But the most important effect is in the short distance contribution to this, and that is the thing that's being minimized basically. Yeah, the long distance it should be constant.
That is quite similar. So would these Monday functions respect those naturally as much as optimization procedure, or so?
Yeah, so symmetries is in fact something that I'm kind of working on currently actually carefully just to understand a little bit better. So in this work we didn't pay too much attention to symmetries, but I think one thing that is true that I can seem to say is that the optimal vortex position appears to be at some kind of high symmetry point, which basically corresponds to the 1-year center also being at such a point, as far as we understand at the moment. But this is something that is we're kind of working on these systems with symmetries to understand what happens in polarization, being quantized, and all of these things. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't understand when it got this vortex field, you
Yes.
like the magnitude of the arrow is supposed to 0 at some point.
Yes. I suppose.
Should be fine.
Oh, let's see. Which one is this? So is it here somewhere? Right.
Right, yes.
Here. Yeah. So so I guess there's I should clarify that there's like a bunch of different points that look like vortices. Yeah, here in all of these points along the edge, it goes to 0, but not in the middle. Not in the middle. Yeah. Color is magnitude. So in the middle, it is an actual vortex. Other places it's 0. I think these points there, floating around, there it goes to 0. But in the middle, it's blowing up basically.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the problems with MRA systems is that you have some kind of topological construction performing maximally localized Maria states.
Yeah.
Have you thought of applying your methods to these problems?
We briefly considered. I haven't really worked on Maria systems, so I can't say too much about that. I mean, what sort of topological abstraction is this? Is it again? I mean, there are churn bands that
Well, if you do it in a given valley, you have your Dirac cones all have the same circulation.
right.
So in some sense,
Yes.
they're very close to being churns.
Yes.
So I'm just curious with you. It seems like an area that might be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't looked into this, but I'm aware that this is a thing. Roughly, definitely would be interesting to see how that applies now, for sure.
Cool. Any last questions? In which case, with this outlook, I think we can thank Ivan again.